Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Mompreneurs. My name is Sharice Walker, and today I'm here with Kat Newport. And I love that she says she's a recovering executive. So she's here to teach some tidbits that can help you in your mompreneur adventures. So, Kat, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, Sharice, thank you so much for having me on. As you indicated, yeah, I am definitely coming from the executive space where I learned a lot about conflict and conflict avoidance and how to manage conflict and how people really run away from conflict. So, right
Mhm.
now, I'm an entrepreneur myself, a mother, a grandmother, and working with mediation, conflict coaching. I'm an author, working in the community, volunteering for community mediation. So yeah, I do a lot with conflict. I'm one of those strange people who just jumps right into it with no compunctions whatsoever.
Yes. And I think a lot of times that's what an entrepreneur does, right? You just get started. And because if you think about it, you probably are going to talk yourself out of it. So you have to just get into it.
Right on the money, yeah.
So tell us some of the things that you do. I mean, because as a mompreneur, unless you're a solopreneur, you have employees and you have different things that are going on. And I actually was just talking to somebody right before that because I'm hiring somebody, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do to make sure? Because she's a client, and so I don't want to lose that relationship as a client, but yet she's really valuable, and I'm excited to have her join my team as well. So, how do you handle things like that?
So when you're approaching conflict, we typically have, and I say typically, we typically have this built-in trigger that says conflict's bad.
Right.
And it's not. It's really not. Conflict is the seed of creativity and innovation. So if you can change your mindset and the framing around how we're viewing conflict or how you're viewing conflict, it takes a little bit of that pressure off. So coming out of the solopreneur, moving into having staff,
Mhm.
take a look at how you're looking at that conflict. And if you need to have those difficult conversations, have them sooner rather than later. Timing is
Mhm.
important. It takes up a lot of brain space, a lot of emotional space
Yeah.
to, oh, gee, should I have the confrontation? Should I not have the
Mhm.
confrontation? Should we really have this conflict? No, I can live with it. It's fine.
Right. Mhm.
So there's a lot of energy put into that where when we finally do dive into that conflict with an employee or with a colleague, it's usually a lot less impactful than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I think I was talking with one of my friends, and she said that she's had this girl that's worked with her for years, but the girl does whatever she wants, right? And so she's like, she creates so much work for me. And I thought, well, wait a second. She's supposed to be taking work away from you. And I said, why haven't you talked with her? And she, well, because she's worked with me for so long. It's like, okay, but does she know? Does she know that you're frustrated? And well, we're having that conversation today. So the crazy thing is, she actually hired somebody, a manager, to manage her so that she could let her go. And so
Oh,
it's because we get emotionally involved sometimes, right? And so, have you had instances like that? And how do you coach somebody through that?
so you really got to take a look at what your internal narrative is when it comes to conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a friend? And if it's a friend, what are you telling yourself that this conflict is going to lead to?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the example that you're giving me, what I'm hearing is the first thing that came to mind was the word boundaries.
Right.
This is what I will accept, this is what I won't accept, and preemptively putting those boundaries in place before we hit the firecracker moment, before we hit this, I think I really need to get rid of this person,
Right.
can really mitigate a lot of the conflicts you have in the very first place. And I know a lot of clients who come in, it's like, well, I don't need a boundary. I got to take care of these people. This is what I've been hired for. This is what I got to do. Uh, Boundaries are part of taking care of people because if you don't have that emotional energy
Mm-hmm.
left in the tank to deal with all the things and do all the things for all the other people, you're going to be useless anyway. You're not going to be able to give the 100% that you want to give.
Mm-hmm.
So preemptively put those boundaries in, and then proactively deal with the conflict because it's probably going to be a lot less impactful than you think it is.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So, what if you have somebody? Are you familiar with the color code at all? By Taylor Hartman, or the
Um,
DISC model, or
yes, yeah,
whatever.
I'm familiar with the personality assessments. Yes.
So, I mean, doesn't matter what they're called. They can be white. They can be, I mean, they're the type that they don't like conflict. And so they just, I call it gunny sacking, where you keep putting stuff in. And even at home, if you have a spouse or if you have a child and you're so frustrated because they just won't do what you want them to do, no matter how many times you ask, no matter, like I call it Groundhog Day with my teenager right now. It's like, he can't get himself to school on time, right? And so I'm like, okay, you can't shower in the morning anymore. And it's like, okay. And the next thing you know, you wake him up and he's in the shower. And I'm like, what the, you know? And so, how do you help those people that have a hard time expressing how they're feeling so that they can get to a solution?
Okay. So there's a couple of things at play here. And I hear this a lot with my clients. How can I make someone do something? How
Right.
can I make them take that shower? How can I make them get up 10 minutes earlier? And
Yeah.
there's only one person on this planet that you can control. And as a parent to teenagers,
Oh,
it's not them. Um,
Groundhog Day. You
the
and
only
me.
person, the only person you can control is yourself.
Yeah.
So, what are you willing to tolerate? What are you not willing to tolerate? And this drops us back into boundaries. So, when
Mm-hmm.
we have people who are naturally conflict avoidant or lean to conflict avoidance because of their story, because
Mm-hmm.
of their narrative, what they're telling themselves, it's about leading with compassion and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Keep pushing the door open. Cherise, I see that you look a little off today. Is there something you want to talk to me about? No, 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 no. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
Come back to them in the afternoon. Cherise, you had your coffee break. Are you feeling good? You're not talking to me like you did last week. Is there something that I need to do to make you more comfortable? Keep opening that door
Mm-hmm.
because the other person's processing something and
Right.
they might need that door cracked open when they're ready.
Yeah.
So again, I know it seems silly. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm a senior Gen Xer. So
Mm-hmm.
coming from a workplace where emotions don't belong in the workplace. No, leading
Yeah.
with compassion, empathy, and love
Mm-hmm.
is going to make a huge difference when you're talking about conflict in the workplace. When you're talking about conflict with family,
Yeah.
how do you want to be treated if this was reversed?
Mm-hmm. I was in one of the colleges I was directing. I remember I had an admissions rep. And so the admissions reps, to kind of give you some background, they're the ones that interview the potential students and try to get them into the college. And so we usually would find the people to come, but they have to close them, and they had specific benchmarks that they had to meet, and this one particular person just would not perform in any, she just was not coachable, she would not perform. And I remember having a conversation with her because I was the director, and her boss, who's the director of admissions, and I said, look, there's two people in this room fighting for your job and you are not one of them, and she just went, oh my gosh, and it's like, we want you to be successful, but how can we help you be successful? And eventually it's not the good story where she like turned it around. We had to let her go. But, it's those type of things, that having those conversations and helping them know that you're there to support them. It's not just like, I don't want to have to ever let anybody go. But at the same time, they have to perform. Right. So conflict, that's a tough and tricky thing. So, who do you coach?
Who do I coach? So it's a variety of folks that I coach. So I coach internationally with entrepreneurs. So those who are starting up their businesses,
Mm-hmm.
getting through that startup phase, potentially getting that brick and mortar place going through, hiring their first staff, how to move from that, the tech startups going from, okay, it was me and my great idea. Now I have a staff of 20 and it's been 15 minutes. Oh my gosh, what do I do with them? That kind of moment. I
Mm-hmm.
also work with larger organizations in specific instances where there might be a challenge. So, dealing with some conflict coaching one on one. So, what is your narrative? Dealing with some mediation, bringing the two parties together, and also working with organizations and training their staff to give that culture of open conflict. And again, open conflict sounds bad, but it's not. Open, healthy, positive, proactive conflict, giving the language to the folks so that they're all speaking the same language. They all know what to expect in a conflict. And we can start reprogramming those narratives so that the corporate culture leans towards that creativity and innovation versus the gossip and the backstabbing and the career assassination.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how let's talk about that because culture is a big deal in an environment when you've started to see that. Um, how do you coach people to not have that type of a culture?
So again, we got to look at it on sort of three different levels. We look at it on the individual level. So when we're dealing one-on-one, it's what is your narrative? What is your story? What are you telling yourself about this situation? Figuring out why you're there. Why are you at this work? Why do you do what you do? What does that look like? Where do you want to be with this? And if it's I show up for a paycheck so I can go home and live my life, so be it. I mean, that is perfectly normal.
That's
There's nothing wrong with that.
totally my husband. Absolutely. Yeah.
Are they looking to climb the ladder? Are they looking to parlay this into another job, into another field? Trying to figure out why they're there.
Hmm.
And then looking at capacity. What is it that you can do in this situation? What is it that you can manage with conflict? Because we all have different capacities. Not
Hmm.
everybody's going to be, a little bit crazy like myself and just fly right into conflict. No problem. Let's play with this. Um, right? I might be a strange bird.
Where's
So
your cape? You have your conflict cape, right?
so some folks just don't have the capacity to work in that team environment to manage those conflicts. So they're going to have to rely on other people and deal with resources and manage resources and take resources that are going to get them over that hump. So we look at it that on that individual level. And then we look at it on a event level. So, are we dealing with particular events like we're changing to a new software program in the organization? Change always leads to conflict.
Hmm.
I like the old way. I don't want to do the new way. That used to be my job. Why is it now your job?
Hmm.
And working through those events either as a team or as an individual.
Yeah.
Or through mediation if we do have smaller pockets of people who need to come to some sort of agreement. When we're looking at the culture, this also brings in the overarching HR piece and how those people managers manage the people. The people
Hmm.
leaders must lead. So if we do have that one individual in the organization or a group of individuals who is, always tub thumping or the ones that, rattle the sabers a little bit harder than the others, what are we doing to make sure that they are being heard? Because that there
Right.
may be some very valuable insights coming out of
Mhm.
that group of individuals. And how do we bring that in and how do we reassure them that we are moving together as a group? And if we have folks who don't want to be with the organization anymore,
Mhm.
it's time to have that tough conversation and say, this is the direction we're going. It doesn't seem like you're comfortable. How do you want to manage this moving forward? So, yeah.
I think in one of the very first professional jobs, I started teaching college very, very young. And in that, we used to, because the classes got out at 10 o'clock at night. So there's a group of us teachers that would talk. And I was 22 to 20, I think 7 or 28. And we would spend probably a half hour to an hour, or we go out and eat at a restaurant. And then we talk about, and I won't name the name because the college isn't even around anymore. Wonder why. But As the World Turns, that soap opera show from, a long time ago. And so we'd sit there and say, well, if we were the bosses, this is what we would do differently. Right. And I think one of the smartest things that college did is they actually got the teachers involved. So, like, I got to do the scheduling, or they had the teachers, we had different committees. And so we were able to talk about things. We were able, because we were in the classroom with the students. So we heard their complaints. We knew what was going on. We understood. Plus, we knew what was broken because we're having to deliver the messages. And so it was very smart, I think, in that school what they did because it also helped us feel like we have a voice. So instead of shutting us down, I welcomed that. And so when I started directing or running my own colleges, we try to do the same thing where you have different people in different positions that can take over and give us the feedback that we need. And so I think the conflict, you're right. Conflict is a great thing because to me, I look at it as just a different perspective that that we don't see. Um, there's I don't know if you're familiar with it was a group dynamics class I taught, but it's the stages of forming a successful group of people. It's forming, storming, norming, and then performing. And so I think a lot of people stop at the storming, which would be your conflict, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me, some juicy stories. Like, what is one of those conflicts that, you're really like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through this? And you got to the other side.
Just one. Okay, hang on. I
Yeah,
searched through my mental database.
you can give us more than one if you want.
Figure this out. So I had a client organization, and we had an individual who was very, how do I put this, old school in their management style.
Okay.
Very command and control, very you shall do what I say,
Yeah.
very much that kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was prevalent. This was them. This is how they stood in life. This is how they interacted with their reality.
Mm-hmm.
So the staff is having challenges.
Yeah.
So they called in some help. So this started with coaching,
Mm-hmm.
very much so. How do you see yourself interacting with others? How is this working for you? Changing the frame, doing a little bit of self-reflection. And this took a little bit longer than I had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was ingrained. They were a senior leader. They were not, new to the game. They had built a reputation on this. So it took a while to really start changing that frame. And from the coaching environment, they have to bring that back into the workplace. So changing those little things step by step. I mean, you can get all the training you want, but if you don't apply it, there was no point.
True.
Bringing it back into the workplace and seeing how this individual was incrementally changing.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about the organization is they also provided HR support to the staff around. So that, okay, so what's going on? Because, typically organizations don't bring in folks like me until the fire is burning.
Yeah. The sky is falling.
The sky is falling, the lawyers are involved, things, just
Oh, yeah.
things.
Yes. Oh.
So, HR was definitely engaging with the employee assistance program to make sure that everybody felt safe and secure. There was a leave of absence involved. There was training involved. So everybody got that same conflict language, so
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not comfortable with the tone of voice you're using with me. Can you change it so I can hear you better?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of language, as opposed to stop shouting at me. Time out. Time out.
Yeah, you say things so nicely. You can tell you're good at what you do because you just say it very
I've done
nicely.
it once or twice. Yeah.
Yep.
So in the end, they actually retained this leader.
Oh, wow.
It was quite the transformation. I'm not going to say it happened in a week. It didn't even happen in a month. It took the better part of a year,
Mm-hmm.
year and a half to really start that ball rolling. But it was a concentrated effort on the organization. So yeah, it does take investment. Once you get to the fire's burning point, which is why I'm a big proponent of, let's bring this stuff in a little earlier, maybe at the smoke or smolder point, as opposed to the
Mm-hmm.
conflagration, everything's on fire point.
But that's probably pretty common for you, right? Because people want to just keep, again, it gets back to conflict. They don't really know, let me just ignore it until it gets so bad that, oh, really, this is serious, And
Absolutely.
I remember going to, I was getting ready, I was done with my husband, and I went to somebody and asked, like, I need help. And, oh, it's just a little minor tweaking. And so, 10 months later, after everything happened and he separated for a while, like, I really did want to go back and go, minor tweaking, right? No. And so it's, if you can get in at the beginning, then it's much easier. But why
Absolutely.
do you think people don't?
I think this is really a conflict habit thing. I mean, from the moment we draw breath, we're being taught by our families how to deal with conflict. So if we come from that, picture perfect, healthy family, okay, you have a difference opinion with your brother or your sister, and how are we going to move forward together? And you get these skills, and this is my boundary. No, I'm not going to put up with this, but we're going to move forward together, and everything's going to be okay because we are working together, even though we do have that difference of opinion. Great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I've come across many families who do
Yeah,
that.
that's really true. That's a really good point.
And as you grow and evolve and you get these peers involved, how do your peers deal with conflict?
Mm-hmm.
how do your colleagues and coworkers deal with conflict? All of these things start informing how you interact with the people around you from a conflict perspective.
Yeah.
And unless you're intentional with the message you're telling yourself and how you want to show up in the world, these habits, they kind of pop out automatically. How dare you talk to me like that? Where'd that come from? It's just those snap decisions, right? So it has to be intentional.
That's a good point. And I think culture, understanding each other's cultures and backgrounds, and I think that person, you have to. And I don't think a lot of times people are aware of their triggers until it's already happened.
Agreed.
Okay, so if you were sitting on a park bench with your 18-year-old self and now, you're sitting next to him and you have all the wisdom and the years, what would you say to your 18-year-old self?
Conflict's not scary. It's just not scary. You can do this. I think from an 18-year-old self, when I look back, I was so scared to have those difficult conversations that I really found myself in some really sticky situations. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Having a conflict doesn't mean you're not worthy. It means you're working it out. And I think that's what I'd say.
Okay, so you cut out. What was the last part?
The last part?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where I cut out, so I'll start a little bit further back. So
Okay.
sitting on that park bench, I would definitely look at myself and I'd say, having a conflict doesn't mean you're not worthy as a person, that you've done something wrong.
Right.
It means that you're working it out. You're working life out, and you're working it out with the intention of continuing that relationship with that individual or that group.
Mm-hmm.
Conflict doesn't mean you're not worthy. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're working it out.
So how did you get to where you are now today?
A lot of conflict.
Okay.
I'd love to say I sort of popped out of my family going, oh, I know all this stuff. Everything's great. No. It has been a very, very long road. Worked in a very dynamic environment for a lot of years in a lot of different companies. Learned what not to do, unfortunately, the hard way.
Right.
So there's definitely a passion to please don't do this. Try this instead. There's definitely, this is the lesson. Don't learn it the bad way.
I think that's true because I look at what I'm passionate about and what I want to help people with. And it's usually the thing that you're like, I wish I would have. And so you go and or from the experiences that you've had, that you're like, you know what, I want to help other people not have to go through what I went through. So good for you. I think that's fantastic. So your takeaway, what do you want people to know?
In a nutshell, conflict equals creativity. If you don't look at another point of view, the only point of view you'll ever carry is your own. Conflict equals creativity.
I love that. And I liken it to, again, way back when they didn't have these huge stadiums that were built. And so imagine like the Sandlot, those boys running up into those wood fences that had the little knots in all of them. And so they too poor to afford the game. So they start watching the game through these knot holes. Well, one kid goes up to this knot hole and he's watching, and the kid's like, I want to see. He goes, no, go find your own. So he goes to another side, and so he watches the game. Well, they're both watching the same game, right? But are they really watching the same game? It's a different perspective. And I think that that's what we have to remember, is that perspective is everything. And the conflict, I love that, because that was my takeaway as well. Conflict equals creativity. And that's how you might end up getting to a better solution than you ever could have imagined. So be open to it. Thank you. So how do our listeners find you if they want to work with you?
The easiest way to find me is through the website, www.smartconflictbook.com.
Good. Smartconflictbook.com. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kat, for being on my show. And I hope that our listeners understand that conflict is good and we need to embrace it, not run from it. So
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.